right, good evening. And those at home and those here as well to the October 15, 2007 edition of the Portsmouth City Council meeting. We'll begin this meeting by calling it to order and asking the city clerk to conduct a roll call.
Mayor Marchand?
Here.
Assistant Mayor Farini?
Here.
Councilor Grasso?
Here.
Councilor Dwyer?
Here.
Councilor Reynolds?
Here.
Councilor Panalakis?
Here.
Councilor Whitehouse?
Here.
Councilor Smith?
Here.
Councilor Hines?
Here.
Very good. If we could all stand, we'll have Councilor Reynolds lead us in the pledge this evening. For a moment of silence followed by the pledge.
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we have a presentation from our esteemed Senator, Martha Fuller Clark, who's here this evening. Give us an update on legislative activities, past, present, and future, up in Concord, and appreciate the work you do and appreciate you being here tonight as well.
Thanks. I'm going to just give you a little sheet here to hand around, and then I have some extra copies. Share with the audience.
I wanted to thank you very much for making the time for me this evening. For the record, I'm Senator Martha Fuller Clark. I'm delighted to appear before the Portsmouth City Council this evening. And as you know, I represent District 34, which includes not only the city of Portsmouth, but the surrounding towns of Newcastle, Rye, Northampton, Hampton Falls, Newington, and Greenland. And I'm here tonight to give you an update on the 2007 session and to be prepared to answer any questions that you might have, both with regard to legislation that was passed last year and also with regard to legislation that has been filed for this year, or specific needs that you might have and that you are interested in seeing legislation filed in Concord on behalf of the constituents and citizens and residents of the city of Portsmouth. So I'd just like to briefly go through this list and to let you know that I'm very proud of the real progress that was made last year in the legislature on behalf of all of the citizens of New Hampshire. And I'm very proud of the work that our delegation, the Portsmouth delegation, did in Concord. And of course, as you all know, we've been quite honored because Representative Terry Norelli was elected as Speaker of the House, and she is the first Democratic woman to serve as Speaker of the House, and she has been doing an excellent job. And I know that she is also available to you on an ongoing basis for any concerns or questions or initiatives that you have. But I would like to go through this list that you have in front of you. As you know, we increased the minimum wage. This was a 10-year fight. And finally, this legislation has been passed, and it brings us into line with the federal increases that are going forward, and it also brings us more into line with the rest of New England. We had the lowest minimum wage in all of New England before it was raised. Secondly, we passed two critical bills to assist consumers. One is a bill which is entitled the Foreclosure Rescue Bill. This is legislation to help individuals who may be in the process of losing their homes due to predatory lenders. Not prepared to discuss that in detail, but I wanted to let you know that that legislation was passed, and I would be happy to get you more information on that and how it works, and also for the citizens of New Hampshire. We also passed another bill to help consumers, which was known as the Prepaid Heating Oil Protection Bill. And this was the result of seeing a number of small companies in New Hampshire taking prepaid agreements from consumers on the basis that it would keep the price of their heating oil low, and then after they'd taken these prepaid agreements, they went out of business. And there were no mechanisms in place to protect individuals who had prepaid for their heating oil. And this now makes it possible to do that. It requires that, and one of the requirements is that these companies have to post a bond, so that if for any reason they were to go out of business, there would be a mechanism there to aid those individuals who lost money. There are also some other mechanisms in place to help some smaller companies where it might be more difficult for them to put in place a bond. We have established an affordable workforce housing planning program. It's actually known as the Conservation and Housing Planning Program. It was my legislation. I'm proud that it passed, and I'm working now with the advisory committee to put in place the rules to be able to implement this. But it is a $400,000 fund that is available to assist communities of any size in addressing the issues of finding ways to put in place affordable housing, and at the same time make sure that they don't put open space, conservation protected lands, important historic resources at risk, but find ways to make sure that there is a balance. Too often the protection of open space has been seen as a mechanism to raise the cost of housing in terms of the available land that's left for development. And I'm happy to share with you more information about that program as the various implementation aspects of that program go forward, and who can qualify and at what range and for what dollars. We also passed additional language to strengthen the college savings plan and to ensure the future of the community technical college system by putting additional monies into the community college technical system, and also putting in place a mechanism that's going to make sure that, for instance, the community college system here on the Seacoast is able to move from Stratum to the PDA campus in a more expeditious time frame. We continued to work on strengthening and restoring the Welfare to Work program, and I have to thank Keith Bates here in Portsmouth for helping us and advising us as we move forward with that legislation. For the first time in many years, the state moved to eliminate and improve the system for the developmental disabilities services. And the objective of this legislation is that within 3 years, we will have no names on a wait list for the disability and development services. That's something that I know, having been in the legislature for almost 20 years, and the same with Representative Panalakis, that we have worked for years to try to deal with this, make sure that people who are over 21 who have lost various kinds of assistance because they're disabled are now going to be able to receive those services. There was a death penalty put in place for police or firemen killed in the line of duty. A benefit, not, I'm sorry, a death benefit that makes sure that those individuals who serve us so admirably, that their families are not left without some appropriate financial footing. We also, as you know, continue to struggle with the issue of education. We passed a definition of adequacy that includes within it that every child, New Hampshire child, will have the opportunity to attend kindergarten. There are still, I believe, 11 communities in the state of New Hampshire, and frankly, 11 communities nationwide that do not offer public kindergarten, and all of those communities exist within New Hampshire. We want to make sure that that's not the case in the future. The Costing Commission has been meeting since September now, looking at how, given that definition, they can move ahead in terms of determining what that cost will be. That report will come forward in January, and then we will move forward, as I understand it at this point, to look at actually trying to put a funding formula in place. The dropout prevention was assisted by raising the age that students are required to stay in school to age 18, but also there was funding included in this legislation to ensure that there would be alternate programs for students who do not flourish in a traditional public education system. We put in place a research and development tax credit for businesses to ensure that we have new and innovative initiatives in the business world coming forward in New Hampshire. And we also reinstituted a job training fund to ensure that we have a competitive workforce, not only a fund but a program. And there has been an effort to expand the internet broadband access to the rural parts of New Hampshire. Not so much of a problem here, but I'm sure you've been following this fall. What this bill actually did was to fund the Office of Consumer Protection within the Public Utilities Commission to make sure that as the Verizon Fairpoint transaction negotiations went forward, that consumers were going to be adequately protected. And that is still an ongoing issue. And as you know, Verizon has offered to sell out its services to Fairpoint, and that Fairpoint Communications would come in and manage all of those telecommunication services for not only New Hampshire but for Vermont and Maine. But that transaction can only go forward if all 3 states approve and recommend that this transfer should happen. So we wanted to make sure that in the process there was an analysis of how in New Hampshire this could impact on ordinary citizens, and so we provided $150,000 to make sure that there was a study that would analyze that impact vis-a-vis consumers. I know that we have banned smoking in restaurants and lounges. This is a very important piece of legislation despite all the controversy, because it really has to do with the issue of the health of our citizens across the state. We continued to expand the Children's Health Insurance, or SCHIP program, and that now really lies in the hands of the federal government, and we would welcome your input, and I know that the governor would, with regard to our federal delegation, to encourage them not to undercut the SCHIP program. It's so terribly, terribly important that our children get the health insurance that they need and get the preventive care that they deserve. We also passed 2 additional pieces of legislation, which I'm proud to say I co-sponsored, and one was to make sure that families that were divorcing, that both members of that family could continue to stay on the family health insurance plan for a minimum of 3 years or up to the time that one of those spouses remarried. And we heard compelling stories from a number of individuals who had separated and were moving on into other relationships and other sort of status, but had never actually gone the full step of divorce because they were very, very concerned about their ex-spouse losing health insurance. And we think that's not a healthy environment for any of us to be living in. And finally, legislation that would allow family coverage to be extended to young people who either were still in school, both full-time or part-time, or were working in New Hampshire up to the age of 25. So what we're trying to deal with is lessening the number of those individuals in New Hampshire who have no health insurance. Over the 7 years, we've gone to something like 90,000 individuals in New Hampshire having no health insurance, to having over 135,000 individuals have no health insurance in New Hampshire. So anything that we can do to lower those numbers means that ultimately we're going to lower the cost of health insurance premiums and health care for all of us, because without insurance, the uninsured wait, use the most expensive means of treatment when they do need treatment, and often have allowed a situation to move to a critical situation where it's much more expensive. We continue to address the issue of lead poisoning in children, and provided and put in place additional standards that needed to be recognized by property owners with rental properties. The Land and Community Heritage Fund was funded to the full $12 million, $6 million coming out of the governor's budget, and then the additional $6 million derived from a small fee on a registry of deed documents with a cap of $100. No one who is moving through a series of document changes due to the sale or transfer of property will be charged more than $100 maximum, but on an individual document, it's much smaller. We have banned in the state of New Hampshire the burning of toxic construction and demolition debris, and there is a committee that is put in place to look at alternatives of how we continue to deal with that. I'm very proud to say that I provided the leadership to ensure that New Hampshire joined the rest of New England to finally put in place a program to create incentives for renewable energy and to promote renewable energy generation. We also repealed the sunset on the system's benefit charge, and that charge has to do with making sure that there are monies that are set aside to encourage electrical efficiency. And it's very critical in this time when we're all addressing the issues of climate change and global warming that we find every way possible to encourage efficient use of energy. We banned mercury disposal in open landfills, and we passed legislation that would improve the operation and administration of the state park system in New Hampshire. In addition, we eliminated straight ticket voting, and we repealed the unconstitutional law that infringed on a woman's right to choose, a law that was deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in Washington and remanded back to New Hampshire. And in addition to that, as I know you're well aware, we were successful in passing civil unions for same-sex couples. So that's just a list of some of the top key pieces of legislation that I've provided for you. I'm proud to say that we went forward with a responsible budget. It didn't include an income or sales tax. And that, as you know, we are going to continue to deal with the issue of adequate funding for education, and I will continue to be a stalwart objector to putting back in place any type of a statewide property tax when the funding formula goes forward. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have, and I do have a list here of all of the LSRs that have been filed so far for the second session, and I'm sure that you can go on to the New Hampshire General Court webpage and download this list for yourself. It is now 38 pages, and that means that a total of 652 bills have been filed. Most of those are coming out of the House. The Senate filing deadline is next Thursday at 3 p.m. That is the 24th of October. And I know that we will see a number of bills still coming forward from the Senate. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and I'm sure that Representative Penelakis would be also glad to do so. So thank you very much for giving me this time before you and providing a forum. So also those individuals who are watching City Council tonight also have a sense of what was accomplished in the last legislative session, and will also have an opportunity to contact me if there is critical legislation that they would like to see brought forward in the second session. We have passed the budget, so bills that have money in them, we're not particularly interested in. We hope that any bill that where you're looking for additional funding, you will hold off in requesting or submitting until next year. So thank you very, very much.
Great, thanks. And unless any questions? Seeing none, but of course, I know you don't mind if folks get a hold of you either at home or here on this side. And
I have put my webpage, not my webpage, my email address at the top of the list that I've given you, so please feel free to contact me with any additional questions or concerns that you might have, and I'm more than happy to come back and meet with you at any time, both in a work session and before the full council as well. So thank you again very, very much.
Great, thanks again. Very good. We'll move on now to the acceptance of minutes from our last meeting, October 1st meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Now we move on to public comment. We have two speakers this evening. I see they're both here. Our first is Bert Cohen. Bert will be speaking about the eco-municipality resolution that we'll be discussing a little later this evening. Bert.
Evening. Thank you for the time to be here. I would like to just express the committee's, did I hear louder? I'm sorry. I would like to say that I'm here on behalf of the city's Blue Ribbon Committee on Sustainability. And you have the resolution in your papers that we've sent, and also a letter. So tonight, I'm here to speak just briefly that the committee would recommend that we adopt this resolution for two reasons mainly. And number one is that the city has already pursued a path that is leading towards sustainability in many areas. And this resolution acknowledges that, and that's something that our city is very proud of when I talk to citizens in the community. Secondly, the resolution puts us in a position to put out a vision. When I heard Martha talk about all of the things that are being done on the state level and on the national level, sustainability really does take place in the local community. That's where it happens. And our city has a good grounding in where we're going, and this resolution will provide a framework and 4 systems conditions that can provide a leadership and a vision for our city to move forward. And so I and my other colleague from the committee are here tonight if you have any questions later when the resolution came up. So I just wanted to say these few words to begin with, and I'd answer any questions now or later if you have them.
Appreciate it, and probably in short order, we'll be at that point, and if there are questions during any discussion that we'd have, if you don't mind sticking around a short while, and the questions come up, be glad to entertain it at that point. But I appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you.
And as you mentioned, Ann Walker from the school board representing, also here, and appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our second and final speaker this evening is Martin Cameron, who will be speaking this evening on city business.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, staff.
Martin Cameron, 469 Ocean Road, Portsmouth. Just want to be brief. I want to offer my thanks to the stars in the heavens above and probably to the devil below for some people on the wise, well-planned decision of Judge Kenneth McHugh. He came to the same conclusion and decision that many of us did 2 years ago. So that's all I have to say about it. I'm going to go home and watch the ball game. Thank you all.
Great, thank you very much. Our next portion of the agenda is the approval of grants and donations. We have one this evening. It's a donation to the new library fund, Jerry Hickmonick. It's a $5,000 donation. It's the final installment of a very generous $15,000 total pledge.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And again, the gratitude of everybody here, very generous and to a very worthy cause. Our next segment is consideration of resolutions and ordinances. We have two this evening. The first is a first reading of resolution authorizing the borrowing of up to $750,000 through the issue of bonds, notes, or the execution of lease purchase agreements for the acquisition of one fire apparatus. Can I get a motion on this?
Move to pass first reading and bring back for public hearing and adoption the proposed resolution as presented at the November 19th, 2007 City Council meeting.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments on this first reading? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Our second item is a third and final reading of ordinance amending Chapter 16 by the addition of a new Article 2 entitled Regulation of Discharges into Stormwater Drainage System. Yes. Oh, sure, Counselor, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Move to pass third and final reading as submitted.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Next is consent agenda. It's a short one, only 2 items. If anybody would like either or both of those items pulled aside, this would be the time. Seeing none, you can, at the end of it, motion would be in order to adopt it in its totality. The first is an acceptance of donation to the Coalition Legal Fund, the town of Newington, generously at the level of $2,000. And the second item is a letter from Majors Chester and Joy Emmons, the Salvation Army, requesting permission to place the Christmas kettles in Market Square beginning November 19th, 2007 through the 24th of December.
Move to adopt the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. We move to the presentation and consideration of written communications and petitions, 4 items. The first, as you heard about just a moment ago, is a request to consider the eco-municipality designation resolution. The motion hopefully would include something dealing with November 19th, which is our next regular meeting.
Your Honor, I'd move to bring back the resolution for adoption at the November 19th, 2007 City Council meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Dwyer.
Just a little clarity about what the implications are of, as Bert described, in some ways, this kind of formalizes some things that we're already doing, but I wonder if there are other implications, if it makes us eligible for some opportunities, or...
Good question.
I'll speak to the issue. I think Cindy Hayden, the Deputy City Manager, working with the Sustainability Committee, has reviewed the resolution. It will not be detrimental to the city.
Right.
That's first and foremost. Will it help us? Possibly, I guess, depending on if we go to a foundation or something. I suppose it may help us that we have signed on. I know that we've reviewed it, and from a staff perspective, we don't believe this has any negative impacts.
Or perhaps an additional way of putting it too is, I think this is accurate, there would be no, say, requirements that would have a direct fiscal impact by
Probably better
definition.
Yes.
But if nothing else, at a minimum, and I think you'd agree with this, it's a statement about some of the work that's already been done, the values behind it, the commitment to continue forward, as much as anything.
Right, and the thing is that from a staff perspective, and I know that the committee's aware of this, that from a cultural perspective within the organization, every project that we do now, we are asking ourselves the questions about sustainable practices, with the new fire station, with the new water treatment plant, as you saw through the presentation. Numerous amount of time and effort went in on how that plant will be designed and how it can achieve sustainability. So Again, anything we do, and it's really interesting within the organization to hear, as projects go forward, people asking the question. So that's a very positive.
Counselor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could, just add to what the city manager explained, as a member of the committee, we also talked about how this declaration of principles and the enumeration of what are called, under the natural step system, the 4 systems conditions, are just a little bit further explication, I guess, of the city's commitment to sustainability as outlined in the master plan. What does it mean to be sustainable? What are the sort of guiding principles? And these 4 systems conditions are one example of one well-recognized set of principles. And when we do bring this back at November 19th, I'll probably say something about encouraging the policy, assuming we adopt it, to be disseminated to the planning board and school committee commissions. And at the Sustainable Practice Committee, we've talked about initiating some kind of dialogue with those committees to sort of, again, just sort of promote the understanding of what sustainability is and what the meaning of these systems conditions are.
Very good. Any other items? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The next item is a request for the authority to place temporary public art on city property for Overnight Art 2008.
Your
Yes,
Honor.
Councilor Whitehouse.
Yeah, Your Honor, I move that the city manager be authorized to bring back first reading on these changes to the Chapter 7 as at our November 19th city council meeting.
I think we're
We're on the wrong item, Counselor Whitehouse.
Authorize you to do that. First reading.
No, we're not there yet.
Counselor
I
Whitehouse,
don't-
we're not at that item. We're
Yeah,
on
I don't believe
item
it require
10B.
multiple readings.
10B.
What?
We're on 10B.
We're on 10B.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
Perhaps if
Your
somebody would
Honor,
like to
I'd
clarify that?
make a
Sure.
motion
Yep.
to recommend the city council to move to permit the installation of temporary public art
Yep.
as identified in the city-owned properties and authorize city manager to oversee Overnight Art 2008 installation.
Second.
Okay, questions or comments? Councilor Whitehouse.
Yeah, I noticed the listing of the 10 locations, and one location is the Memorial Bridge Park, the grassy area between State and Pleasant Street in front of the bridge. So I think that should be changed to State and Daniel, not Pleasant.
Got it.
And also on Haymarket Square, it's very important that the site issue be determined, because Haymarket Square is a small
Right.
lot, and there's a lot of traffic goes around that. So, those 2 things are my concern, that's all.
So noted, we'll specify that. Other questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Third item is a letter from Joel Karp regarding the creation of tool lending library and periodic inspections by State Highway Patrol of the scrap metal trucks entering the Port of New Hampshire. I have a motion on this one.
I move to place on file for future.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments on this? See, oh, sorry, Councilor Whitehouse.
By placing on file, we kind of, read the communication and then don't react upon it later, right? I think it has some merit, even though Home Depot has established a tool rental division out there. I think Mr. Joel Cap has some idea that possibly hand tools and some power tools could be used by people who just can't afford to buy these tools. And I don't know if we should really consider this seriously with Public Works and then come back with a report. We could establish, we could establish a tool crib, which I worked on at the shipyard, and, maybe think about it,
Well, what I would say, would you want to propose an amendment
Well,
to,
maybe I think, rather than, one of the things that I think, I mean, it's a very interesting idea, but there's just a host of liability issues for us that I would rather have our the local government center take a look at. Why don't I do this? Why don't I write a letter to the local government center, the people that insure us, and say, because, if we let a tool out that's a power tool that has not been properly maintained, what liability do we have? If we lend out a tool that has a defect in it because of overuse and somebody gets injured, what is our exposure on it? So I guess before, I think it's an interesting idea, but let me, let's put together a letter. I'll have our Diana Fogarty, who works with our insurance people, take a look at it. I think that's probably the way we should, to spend a lot of time on this and finding out that there's lots of liabilities there, I think would not be in everybody's best interest.
I know if any of the other cities doing it,
Yeah, well,
whereby they sign a waiver, each person that takes a tool out.
Yeah, but you never
signs a
waive
waiver.
out that type of thing, and I would let the city attorney, but we won't get into that tonight, but I'll let the liability people deal with it and see what their thoughts are on
Yeah.
it, because I don't know.
well, Counselor, would you be amenable to that?
I'm fine.
When
Fine with
I
me.
do that, all right?
Okay, other questions or comments off of that, Counselor Reynolds and the Assistant Mayor,
Well, I'm looking at item 2 of the same letter.
or vice versa?
So was I.
And with respect to item 2, I don't know if I want to make a motion at this point. We'll see what Ned has to say, but from my perspective, the writer of the letter, Mr. Karp, indicates there are certain figures with regard to inspections. And while I certainly like to take a representation like that on face value, and I'm sure he's done his research, I, for one, as a council member, would like to know if that information is available for us from the State Highway Patrol, and if it indeed is as severe as is indicated by this letter. And at that point, it might be interesting to take some further action, but I would like to see if that's something that we could ask the city manager to request without a formal motion.
Yeah, and I can do that. I think while back when this was done, I think there was a full report out there, but I'll
Well, I
see-
think it's a question of, even if there's a full report, it's going on into the future, and why would we not hold their feet to the fire?
Oh, of course we would.
Yeah.
It's just that the information's there. I mean, so we can get it. I mean, I'll probably have to get it locally, and I'll try to do that, and I'll ask the chief to maybe help us with that. That's all.
Thank you for that. It sounded like you had the same concern.
Yeah, I was more interested in that provision and, following up to see if there was.
Okay, other questions or
Available for us.
comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. The final item in this section is a letter from Barbara Massar, pro Portsmouth, requesting permission to hold the tree lighting ceremony and financial support in the amount of $1,000 for production expenses for the ceremony.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move we take $1,000 from contingency to donate to this cause.
And also, there is the formal request for permission, just that,
Yes.
for the ceremony implicit in that, all right?
Your Honor, may I ask the maker of the motion to change it from donate to fund, because
Would it be
yeah,
taken from,
it's very similar to what we do with others, that they're actually doing a service for us that we would do if they didn't exist.
would still be taken from
Yep,
contingency?
right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That noted, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and I see Barbara is here. If there are any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. We move on to the city manager's portion of the agenda. I believe he has two items requiring action this evening.
Thank you, Your Honor. The two items that I have is the first item that we discussed in a non-meeting with council relative to memorandum of understanding regarding a memorandum of agreement between the Portsmouth Board of Fire Commissions and Local 1313 IAFF dealing with a stipend for boat operation.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move to approve the memorandum of agreement between the Portsmouth Board of Fire Commissioners and Local 1313.
Second.
Okay, questions or comments on this item? Counselor Reynolds.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm sorry if this question was answered during the session that I was unable to be at, but I'm all in favor of ratifying this MOA and providing the funding for the city to have enough qualified firefighters for our new fireboat. I was just wondering, in that the MOA talks about that the department wants to have a minimum of 16 firefighters. Is there any formal or even informal means of having a certain a limit on the number of firefighters that will be qualified? In other words, is it open-ended that, you know, perhaps 30 members of the fire department might end up as qualified, and thus, you know, what I'm wondering is the budget impact. If they all get the 2% stipend as they're deserving, I just wonder about having an open-ended commitment.
The mayor's position, I'll take that up.
Oh, please.
On the stipend, there are currently 11 of the firefighters trained to be boat operators. This enables us to train at least 16. I could see us going to 20 or 24 eventually, but it is quite extensive training. And again, as talked about earlier, negotiations are upcoming, and the stipend may disappear as well. But this gets them, we're compensated for the training and the rescues they've been doing since the fireboat arrived in Christmas of 2006.
So it's your intent to have 20 or perhaps as many as 24?
Yeah, that could take some time, and the way we work it out is not just, it's like the paramedics. We try to have 2 or 3 paramedics per shift. We may try to have 3 or 4 boat operators per shift out of the 14 that are on duty. So it's a very specialized piece of equipment.
Okay.
Very good. Other questions or comments while we have the chief here? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item is request for a license agreement from 8286 Congress Street LLC, and I would indicate that that's probably it needs to be changed from license agreement to, I would believe, an easement. Yes. In discussing this matter with the city attorney, what happened is, in the course of looking at this, the original discussion with the planning board had a canvas awning. I believe now that the awning is more of a permanent copper type awning that would be a permanent structure, so you'd want to have, they'd want to have an easement rather than just a license for it. And I think the only way that we could give an easement is that we would have to first send this over to the planning board. The planning board would have to originally approve this with a license intent, but because of the change, I believe that the easement would be required.
The city council would actually be doing Mr. McNabb a favor by providing an easement rather than a license. In simplest terms, a license is just bare permission, which can be taken away. But he's going to put up a substantial structure, and therefore he would, I think, want to have the greater protection afforded by a permanent easement.
So that there really is a change. That would be a request for a easement. And so you still would have to send it over to the planning board, and I just wanted to clarify that so people, if they're reading the backup information on this, don't misunderstand why we're sending it over.
Okay, with that, do I have the appropriate motion?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to refer this matter to the planning board for a report back.
Second.
Okay. Further questions, comments? Councilor Whitehouse.
In reference to Chestnut Street being blocked off permanently, there's moves along Chestnut Street that have been made that looks as though it's going to be a permanent situation come the end of the year. I know the traffic and safety, and we decided from August 1 till December 31st, it would be temporarily closed off, but they've established planters along both sides of Chestnut from Congress up to Porter. They've put large bollards in the entranceway from Congress Street with chains across to the bollards. Now we have a permanent
Counselor,
overhang.
if I could just hold, I just want to make sure, I want to maintain the relevance to the motion at hand, because I know there's some informational items coming up where that...
This relates to the issue.
Of an easement?
Permanently,
Okay.
another move towards Chestnut Street being blocked off permanently. That's all I'm saying.
This is for an air easement.
I know it is, but
Well,
here
do
we
you want
are.
me to answer the question, or at least respond to it?
Yep.
If I might?
Sure.
But it's up to you.
Well, I want to make sure we just keep the relevance.
Okay.
And
Yep.
you certainly can talk about this in a moment, but trying to keep it tight procedurally here.
All right.
But please, hold the thought for one moment. Just,
Your Honor, the awning is still an issue, is it not?
Yeah.
The awning
Right.
is still an issue.
I know.
What
Yeah.
way?
Isn't that
Sense.
referred to the planning board?
Yeah.
right.
The motion is to refer this
Back in.
back to the planning board for an easement,
Right.
Congress
just
Street.
because of its permanence, but it's not blocking Chestnut Street in any way, is it?
Well, that's my point.
No.
I know it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
In case I'm not here, I'd just like to have my views be known about Chestnut Street. It's
Well-
another move.
No, I mean, please take this the right way. The merits may be extraordinary. It's just not horribly relevant to the motion.
Yeah, all right.
But in a moment, you can certainly ask the city manager any other questions
okay.
that you might have. But any other questions or comments about this specific motion?
Yeah.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
So,
Okay.
Can
I
I-
understand your issue.
can I ask the city manager if he's received any criticism or comments in reference to certain people not being able to get into their parking area, either on Porter or in another section of that area?
If I might, Your Honor.
Sure.
Let me respond to Councilor Whitehouse's first comments relative to permanent nature of any structure on that street. We have been very careful to work with the music hall to say you cannot put anything permanently there. In fact, there was a request to do some type of color schemes and painting to the roadway, which we asked them not to do because it is a pilot program. So whatever is done there can be taken up. For example, those planters that you speak to, those can be, we could have those out of there in an hour, you know. Those are not attached, they're there. The other thing is a banner across Chestnut. That can be taken down in 10 minutes. The issue of feedback on that, I have not heard any, but would be happy if you have any to share it with me after the meeting so that I can respond to people or at least talk to them about what some of their concerns might be. In fact, I went to an event last night at the music hall, and it was actually pretty useful after everybody streamed out of the music hall to be able to come out onto the street and walk down safely without having any concern for traffic. That being said, we still have to look at the traffic patterns in the downtown. We may find that we need to keep Chestnut Street open. I don't know. We have not yet determined that. So we'll work with the Traffic and Safety Committee. I hope to be working with the Public Works Director over the next couple months to start looking for a traffic model for our downtown. I'd like to get some kind of computer traffic simulation model for our central business district that we can use with the Traffic and Safety Committee. That's so that when certain things happen, even if they're temporary events, we know what happens with traffic. I have not heard negative feedback as of yet, but I cannot say there isn't any out there.
Yeah, just one issue, John. Two people have contacted me.
Okay.
And they live in condos at the Rockingham.
Okay.
They're concerned about field trips with buses coming in with children, parked from all the way from all along the back of Porter Street. Now, it takes a little time to unload the children to go into the music hall. These people who can't get in or out of their Rockingham parking lot, Rockingham condo parking lot.
Has that happened recently?
No, but they're waiting for the field trip to take place.
The thing that you have to realize, Counselor, and I might add, the chain that's across can be opened up to allow for people that have handicap needs or buses to come up.
I'm talking about coming in back of the music hall when the buses are parked on the side to allow the children out.
I can speak to them. I'll speak
It's
to
just a concern
Yep.
of the Rockingham condos.
Okay.
Also, waste management, there's 3 restaurants there now. They pick up probably 3 times or twice a week, and once that waste management truck is parked in the side of the Porter Street and back of the restaurants, nobody can get by.
Okay.
So that's another holdup.
Okay.
So there is a concern from Middle Street on Porter to Chestnut.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments for the city manager? All right, seeing none. Did you have any other items, informational items?
Yes, Your
Yeah.
Honor, I'm sorry, I was just writing a note
sure,
for
yeah.
myself. The next item I would like to just talk about briefly is a piece of good news for us. The city did receive the prestigious National Award for Budgeting again. This is our second year that we received this award. We are, again, the only community in New Hampshire that has this award, and quite frankly, I'm very proud of the work that was done by the Finance Department and all the staff to make this happen. If any of you have, I know you've all taken a look at the budget in detail, but those in the community that haven't had the opportunity, it really, if you compare it to, and I was just doing this afternoon with a 1991 budget, which is about that big and only had 1 page of line items, nothing else for each department, and you compare our document today that has demographics in it, that has a guide to the budget, that has every single fund in it, I think you can be proud that you're a community that has this honor. You know, it's not easy to get. There's a tough review. It took us 2 years to get it the first time. Every year they review it. You don't guarantee to get it the next year. And they send you back comments. And we have a couple comments we're going to have to improve in a couple areas. And we're going to do that. And we're going to continue to build on it. And I'd like to thank the city council that, you know, I think early on we had work sessions on this. The council encouraged us to improve the budgeting. And we took that and ran with it with your encouragement. And I think you should be proud of the fact that we're the only city in the state of New Hampshire that has this designation, along with our comprehensive financial report that is also one of a dozen that has that as well. So this is good news for us.
Your Honor, I think the council would like to congratulate you as well as the finance director.
Yeah, she did a great job.
On this achievement.
She did a great job.
That is a
Thank
lot of
you.
work, and appreciate it.
I agree.
The next thing I would like to do is I'd like to have the city attorney speak to the issue of the recent decision that came down from Judge McHugh as it relates to bonding for the garage at the Weston.
Sure. Just by way of a little bit of background for people watching who may not know, for about 10 years now, the city has been actively proceeding towards the development of a conference center and hotel in the downtown area. The number often used would be a conference center for about 1,000 people. And this concept has been pursued because of the perceived economic benefits, primarily, that it would bring. In 2005, the city's Economic Development Commission, the city's planning board, and the city council, on a number of occasions, voted overwhelmingly to endorse a concept of that conference center being created by means of a public-private partnership with an entity called Harbor Corp., owners of the Sheraton Hotel. In late 2005, a joint development agreement was entered. It's a complex agreement, which would have led to the construction of the 1,000-seat conference center and an associated garage, which would actually be owned by the city of Portsmouth. This joint development agreement called for, among many other things, the city council to borrow $15 million to purchase the garage from the hotel owner after it was constructed. A competing hotel developer brought a lawsuit. That lawsuit was tried earlier this fall, and unfortunately, the court in that case found that the terms of the joint development agreement had not met the balance of competing interests or complementary interests, rather, between the city and the private developer that is required in public-private partnerships where there is going to be municipal borrowing. The city, I think, is still very much interested in trying to develop the conference center, and therefore the plan proceeding herewith will be to try to save the project. And there will be two steps initially in that effort. The first will be that the normal and appropriate post-trial motions will be filed before the end of this week with the court. A motion to reconsider. There are areas in which we would like to suggest that the court might consider different reasoning than was used in this opinion. The second thing is rather unusual, and that is that after the court in this case had indicated to the city that that balance of public and private interests wasn't what the court believed was required by statute, the opinion contains the following provisions. Quote, "The court's ruling herein does not mean that the project is dead. What it means is that as presently structured, the obligations of the parties under the joint development agreement need to be modified." End quote. The second step that I propose that we take, and I will begin work on, is that we accept that invitation from the judge to look at ways in which the overall project could be restructured so as to meet the goals of all the city policymaking bodies, including the Historic District Commission, the Economic Development Commission, the Planning Board, and the City Council, to bring this conference center to downtown in a way that does fit within the framework outlined by the court. This will call primarily for a renegotiation with Harbor Corp, the owner of the Sheraton Hotel, with the judge's opinion in mind, in ways to try to fit the joint development agreement within the parameters. And that action will begin as soon as possible, as soon as arrangements can be made to conduct renegotiation, and obviously as soon as there are developments, or if there fail to be developments, then that will be reported to the City Council as soon as possible.
Very good. Appreciate that. Any comments off of that? I think that was a pretty good summary of what has transpired and what may transpire next. Very good.
Your Honor, that is all I have. If there are any comments or questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Anything else for John, for the city manager? Very good. In that case, we'll move on to 2 items under my name on the agenda. No appointments to be voted upon tonight, however, 5 to be considered for the next meeting, the November 19th meeting, and they include 2 reappointments to the Building Code Board of Appeals, Lisa DiStefano and Chester Keith, an appointment to the Building Code Board of Appeals in Jeffrey Landry, an appointment to the Board of Library Trustees, Carol Lincoln, and Carla Marvin as an appointment to the Trees and Public Greenery Committee. If you have any questions or comments about any of those good individuals, feel free to contact me. Obviously, the same is true of the public as well. But I think we got a good group of folks there, a lot of talented folks in the community. One other thing I did want to mention, and I know that the city has done a number of things, including the website, I believe the e-newsletter, and other opportunities to get the word out. But we've got, obviously, local elections coming up in the relatively near future, and there are multiple opportunities to find out whether it's city council, school board, the police and fire commission spots, that we've got some great candidates all up and down, and all of these that people need to really pay attention to and make their decisions. Tomorrow, I'm sorry, the 17th, that is this Wednesday evening, the city council candidates will be here. It will be televised live. It starts at 7 p.m. It'll last about 2 hours. So please, if you can't be here, I believe it's open to the public. If you can't be here in person, you can certainly watch it on TV. That's 7 to 9 p.m. this Wednesday, the 17th. A week from Wednesday, the 24th of October, same location, same time, 7 to 9 p.m. There'll be another opportunity, this time for the school board candidates and the police and fire commission candidates. So I would encourage the voters at home to pay attention, take any opportunity to find out who's running, ask questions. There's a lot of talented folks running for all these offices. And for the first time in a while, I get to watch it too, which I'm kind of looking forward to. And that is sponsored by Voters for Citizens Education. They're sponsoring both of those events. That's it. That's all I have, unless anybody has any specific questions for me. Don't see any. So we go to Counselor Smith, who has an item under his name this evening.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to bring up that we have, and it's time for an omnibus ordinance again to come out of the parking committee. And I'd like to make the request that we authorize the city manager to bring back for first reading these changes to Chapter 7th at our November 19th meeting. And if I can get a second on that, I'll...
Second.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
If anyone has any specific questions on these, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll go through the whole thing when we get to first reading as well.
Okay, Counselor Whitehouse and then Counselor Dwyer.
Yes. Under Chapter 7, which gives reference to taxi stands designation, they created, the Taxi Commission created a new area on Pleasant Street. It's the easterly side, it's the first parallel parking space north of State Street. So that's directly in front of a bank area. Now, we appreciate what the parking committee did for us, but we found out that people were parking there temporarily and going for coffee, coming back, and the cabs weren't able to get into their space. So we asked the parking manager to temporarily post it for a tow zone area, and that has taken care of the problem. So I hope you indicate this will be a tow zone area in that one location. That has taken care of the problem with the sign. So before it comes back for first reading, that's under A, Chapter 7.
Well, you know, I guess I would, I don't disagree with you, but to change, you could do that on the first reading. You could make that change.
Okay.
I hesitate, you have a votes that have been in place by the parking committee in accordance with our ordinance. This omnibus bill, the ordinance is gonna come back. You have every right to change what's in it and amend it, but the process, the only reason that this is here before you tonight is to follow our protocol that before we
Okay.
develop an
All right.
ordinance, so.
But I can offer an amendment.
Sure.
At the
Oh, sure, and indeed,
All right.
that's the purpose.
This is just to get it
Yeah.
to first reading, and then you have the second reading.
As I
so.
said before, it has cured the problem with a little small sign, tow zone.
Okay, Counselor Dwyer.
This is related to the very last amendment there, and this is, perhaps someone could simply check on this between now and the hearing. I believe that when we, as a planning board, did the Port Walk, that the request was that, because that's a mixed residential as well as retail office, that the loading, unloading zones begin at 7. So I don't know if there is a way that, the way that this is written in that chapter allows for exceptions or how that's done, but I think that's something that came about, that was part of our site review discussion and approval, so I just want to make sure it's not inconsistent or that they come together in some way.
So what you're at,
That area is, of course, is a private way, and I think that would fall under a negotiated contract that we're working on how to handle and police the private way on that, which is a separate, because it is, they're going to own that
So that would not be
boardwalk.
included within this, is what
So
you're
I
saying?
think that would have to fall under the agreement that the city will have with the developer on that.
we would have a parking management agreement with them, or, what was that agreement that we were looking
We
at?
are working on an agreement. It's not completed yet, not a lot of details, but it is clear that this ordinance will not apply to that street.
Okay, that's my question.
Okay, so that's taken care of? Okay.
Very good. Other questions or comments? Again, this will be just to bring it back for first reading, and
This is just authorized for come back for first reading on our November 19th meeting.
very good. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments as we move towards conclusion here? Counselor Dwyer.
Just something, probably, Mayor, for you to take under consideration. We've talked about it a couple times, and I know it's been brought up at EDC and at Planning Board, the idea of creating a group to look holistically at downtown parking issues that would include Parking Committee, EDC, Planning Board members as we go forward, because all those committees are dealing with issues, and to you know, I leave it to you whether that is a subcommittee, whether it's a very short blue ribbon committee, whether it's an ad hoc meeting, but I think everyone is interested in having a more holistic view of parking, our current requirements, our current credits, et cetera.
Well, if it would be okay, because I know we did discuss that, that did come up earlier, is between now and our next regular meeting, which actually seems like quite a ways from now. It's about a month. It's November 19th, I believe, to figure out, because there are a
How
few
to
ways
do
to go at it. And then come on back and figure something out, because I think you're very, very correct. But that's something for the next meeting that we'll come back with something to address that. Anything else?
Your Honor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Not too many